all the way down to 705, 703 I've been working on. And on the other side, I also have a good amount of experiences on the SAP Business Objects, which is purely Bob J, they call it as. And my main focus right now into practices, like I use utility and pharmaceutical and healthcare, these are the two industries I'm focusing on. So most of my BI practices are around these two industries, in fact. And obviously, all of them are BW projects, and all of them are, last three projects are all purely SAP Business Object projects, which includes even BW, in fact. So, and technically, functionally, and from architecture data modeling standpoint, I could definitely share a lot of ideas with what all practices I have been through these years. And I stay in Atlanta, and and I go to customers most of the time, on site. Yeah. And I've heard like you guys already had a couple of sections on the SAP BW module, in fact, and I've already have a, I think Shalini has already forwarded a schedule, like what all we are going to cover based on today's session and based on future sessions. And today, for the next an hour and a half, like very briefly, we'll be having an overview of the SAP BW. I'll be giving you a brief introduction of what is SAP BW is and what all it can be done, and tremendously by the end of the session, you will feel what is really BW in the SAP world, and obviously, like what is exactly business data warehousing in the ERP world, in fact. So once today's session is really going to be very, very interesting, and probably like I will take it up in a way where you guys really have a hands-on experience on the product on its own, not as a subject on its own, on a product on its own. Because why I say product is SAP always develops each module as a product, actually. So in that sense, BW is also a product from SAP standpoint. So that's where I'm trying to focus on. So I have a brief presentation, which is an SAP standard best practice presentation, and obviously it is a old presentation in sense. Why I took that presentation deeply is majority of the concepts and the terminologies which we taught are all riding all the way from the version 3.0, which is a very old version. So the presentation which I'm going to share with you, it's a PDF file, and that gives you a base and a strong fundamentals of SAP BW, what are the components in SAP BW, what are the features available, and what all can be leveraged and what all can be practiced using the product SAP BW. So quickly jumping into the tool, before sharing my screen, I would like to clarify a couple of terminologies which I would be often using where I don't want people getting confused on that. Number one is BI, we call it as business intelligence, and number two is BW, which is called business data warehousing. Okay. Initially, when SAP was brought into existence for a data warehousing tool, they call it as SAP BW, which is called SAP Business Warehouse. And later down the lane, when this product was a lot of times it is used in most of the reporting areas, so they converted this terminology from SAP BW to SAP BI, which is called SAP Business Intelligence. Why? Because a lot of practices are round towards the business areas. So when you talk about business areas, you bring in the business process into it. Okay, when you bring in business process into it, you talk about practices and analytics. So because of this end product being taken up to the level of analytics, they call it as intelligence tool, and that's where they come derived as a business intelligence. Later down the lane, they had a very big merger with a company called SAP Business Objects, where SAP Business Objects itself is a powerful tool where reporting was one of the senior dominated product in the ERP world. So Business Objects, when they bought in, they were too much collaboration of terminologies between these two companies, and they finally decided, let's keep the reporting products, which is the business objects, as business intelligence, and the product which is derived from SAP, which is the data warehousing, keep it as BW. And then the terminology is being changed back from BI to BW back. And now in today's world, whenever SAP or whenever any company talks about BI, it is purely going to be SAP business objects. And that too, from an SAP consultant, it's going to be business objects. When they talk about purely BW, it is going to be a data warehousing, which is a backend actually. So this is where the exact clarification stands by for BW and BI. So with this type of discussion, like when I jump into the subject, based on the schedule what we have, we are going to follow SAP BW, which is the data warehousing, and following down the lane after a couple of sessions, after a couple of discussions we go on, and I will try to set up something with Shalini and make sure like what type of front-end courses are we going to cover, whether we are going to cover from BW standpoint or whether we are going to cover from the SAP BI, which is the business object standpoint. So why I really segregate these two subjects is these two subjects are two different modules actually, and more or less like two different products in fact I'm talking about. So BW has its own features, it has its own functionality, it has its own integration with other systems, and obviously for business object it has its own system, own functionality, own features, own integration to other systems. So these are the different areas like which we would like to cover. So let me start with the SAP Business Warehouse, and we'll keep continuing with the overview of the session. So let me share my screen. Just hold on a second. And please feel free to stop me anywhere, anytime. Like if you guys have any doubts, and I can just start clarifying them and there. And these presentations which I have right now, probably I don't know how can I share this to you, but I'll try to find out a method where you can, something like a SharePoint or something like a a location where you can dump the file there where you can use it for future references. In that way, like we can keep in track like what we covered in the previous classes and what we get to go, So in that way, we can really have a close interaction between the sessions. Yeah. Just hold on a second. You guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So a little bit detail on SAP NetWeaver. SAP NetWeaver is basically a stack where you bring in collaboration of all all company-oriented products, which is purely deliverable from the ERP standpoint. So they call it as a stack of products, in fact. So SAP NetWeaver, when you say SAP NetWeaver, you basically collaborate different areas of business environment into one single ERP technology. So when they say about NetWeaver, it is nothing but a terminology in SAP where they brought in where you can collaborate business process and the business data together. And with the help of NetWeaver, you can really communicate with the external world. You can communicate with the internal world based on different products in SAP where tightly tied up in a eventually matter from the business standpoint. So in that area, there is one small piece which is purely for reporting and analysis, and that's where the SAP BI comes in. Simultaneously, this BI is turned into BW in the later part of the years, but they allotted a small area where it is purely dependent only for reporting and analytics in that SAP NetWeaver stack. Okay, 2004S, the version is basically, it was basically built on 2004, and the 2004s came in after a while, and now it's all in 7.0 components. Now the latest product available in the market is NetWeaver 7.0. So they call it as a 7.0 suite. So whenever they call it as a 7.0 suite, any SAP module with the 7.0 version is called SAP 7.0 suite. So when you say NetWeaver 2004S, it is nothing but a collaboration of all tools and technology with the combination of IT practices. That's the real definition. So you have basically IT practices which is going on one side on the business side, and you also have the technology with a lot of products collaborated on the other side. Merging these two, how the practice is going to be merged with the technology and the product, and that's where the SAP NetWeaver comes into existence, which controls the whole code of the ERP world. So that's why they call it as SAP NetWeaver. So in that small piece, we call it as SAP NetWeaver BI, and in that SAP NetWeaver BI, we classify as 3 different areas. One is the enterprise data warehousing, which is nothing but the backend of the system, and the second one is enterprise reporting, query, and analysis, which is the front end of the system, and the third one is nothing but the business planning and analytical services. Okay, here's what it is. SAP BW initially was called SAP BI. So SAP BW has 2 different types of categories. One is the back end of the system, and one is the front end of the system. Okay, what do you mean by back end and what do you mean by front end? Back end is you basically build the data model for a data warehousing based on the business requirements and the business data, how it is. So that's the real definition. So typically you work on the data, whatever data which is available in the system. Let's say the systems available are Oracle systems, they call Sybase system, they call Unix, they call Linux, and they have a PeopleSoft, you have any XYZ, you name any XYZ, or it can also be an SAP ERP R3 system or ECC system. So data which is available on these systems, purely working on these data. When we say working on these data, which is nothing but molding the data and bringing the data into a data warehouse, eventually in a business format definition, that's called the backend. So you basically talk about the real data modeling. Okay, what is data modeling? Sorry guys. You eventually call data modeling. When data modeling comes into the picture, you basically tell the SAP BW how the data has to be handled in the enterprise systems. Okay, the data is already available in the business side in SAP ERP system, in SAP ECC system. It's available in Oracle tables. Lot of blah blah blah. Lot of systems are available. How these data are going to become, how these data are going to be extracted, how these data are going to be pulled into the SAP business warehouse. So there is a proper definition which has to be derived from the business users, from the business customers, asking them how this data has to be handled. So there comes the requirement. What is a requirement? A requirement is nothing but basically what type of report are these users are going to see. Okay, when you talk about reports, it's basically the end result, like how an output of the data has to be viewed. So they basically have a format layout of a report in a broad perspective, either in an Excel sheet or in a PowerPoint or in any of the database, in a RDBMS package or somewhere else, So they have a layout of a report. So that layout of the report has to be derived from the business people. Okay, what exactly supports the report? So there should be somewhere a data which has to be support the report. Okay, how the data is going to support the report? Through a data warehousing, it has to support the report. Okay, how the data warehouse has to be built based on the data modeling, and how the data modeling will be built based on the reporting definitions. So that reporting definitions are all situated in the front end, and that's what they call it as enterprise reporting, query, and analysis. So purely when we talk about backend, it is nothing but the data modeling architecture. When we talk about the front end, it is nothing but the report definitions and the queries and the analysis. So that's where they have two separate areas in SAP BI, which is nothing but enterprise data warehousing, which is called the back end of the system, and enterprise reporting query analysis, which is called the front end of the system. Now there is a third piece called business planning and analytical services. This is nothing but an extra add-on to the SAP BW system. When I say add-on, it is nothing but an extra functionality to the product. Okay, what do you mean by extra functionality? There is a constant set of procedures and formalities which is taking place in the product. You're adding some more flavors to the product, and that's called the add-on to the product. Not only with the reporting functionality as a front end, you can provide the users what type of report they want. Apart from that, using that reporting technology, you can also plan the data on the report. So when you say plan the data on the report, you can also handle budgeting, you can also handle data planning, you can also handle some analytical services like comparing plan data and actual data. Those type of planning scenarios can be handled. So from where these planning scenarios are coming in? So this add-on basically has some extra features and extra functionality to the product where your enterprise reporting query analysis is being taken to the next level where they can utilize these add-on properties and then make use of their business planning scenarios. And that's where the third one. And obviously, like in the current world, like in the current BI, which is the version called 7.0, we have a lot of add-ons which is going on today in the current product actually. We also have something called SAP BWA, which is called the BW Accelerator. We also have something called integrators. We also have something called mergers. A lot of different techniques and technologies have been used as an add-on to the base SAP BW version. So in this presentation, we at least have only one add-on, which is called the business planning and analytical services. Down the line, after a couple of sessions, we may discuss a lot of different add-ons, how it is behaving with the SAP standard-based BW system. Okay. Coming to the next slide, we have the SAP NetWeaver platform, which I was talking about more about the stack, where multiple products come into picture and multiple layers of information pass through based on the business definition, and the real collaboration of the product with the IT practices goes on typically in a predefined manner. So SAP put up all these procedures into a single stack, which they call it as a NetWeaver platform. Typically, this stack is being categorized into 4 different platforms. Okay, why are we so concerned about the NetWeaver platform? So in today's world, whenever you talk about any SAP product, that SAP product is basically focused on one of the position in these stacks. When you talk about people integration here, it is nothing but the UI. UI is nothing but the user interface. How the users, how the business is going to see the data, whether they're going to see in a portal, whether they're going to see in a Internet Explorer, or whether they're going to see in a SharePoint, or basically what type of user interface. So dealing more about those type of technologies with the IT practices tells you about people integration. The next one is information integration. Now here most of the data is already into the stack, which is basically you know what is the IT practice is, you know what is the business definition, you know what is the data modeling has to look like based on the business definition. Basically, based on the data model, you already dumped the data into the BW system or any master data management system, which is called MDM, where you keep all the master data separately and you keep all the transaction data separately. So those type of products. This layer is mostly talking about the data, which is already into the system, and that's where they call it as information integration. And this data can be utilized in the people integration based on the IT practices or based on the user interfaces what the people are using. The third one is called the process integration. Here this stack is very important when you talk about business process. Okay, the second layer purely tells you about the data, which is the formatted data, and that is the BW data sitting there. How the BW data came into the second layer? Only due to the process integration, which is nothing but the business definition, the IT practices, and the format and the data, how it has to look like based on the business scenario. Those are all described and predefined on the process integration. So after passing all these processes, the data gets cleansed and data gets stored into a predefined format in the information integration. That's what they talk about, the process integration. And finally, we talk about the OS layer, which is the application platform. From where is the data really coming from? Which is basically you can have an ABAP engine, which is nothing but an SAP ECC and R3 system, or a Java base, or at any database, or any operating system abstraction, which is nothing but it can be in any third-party system. So this platform talks about the real operating system layer where the raw data sits in the system, which is nothing but in SAP terminology we call it as a legacy system, where using those data, it goes to the second layer with the proper business process definition. It goes to the third layer and it sits there in the SAP business intelligence layer, and based on business intelligence layer, what type of user interfaces is being interacted with the users, and that's where it goes to the people integration at the top. So this is a very brief introduction for a NetWeaver platform. From the BI, BW standpoint, this definition is more sufficient when you talk about collaboration, when you talk about integration, when you talk about lifecycle management, and when you talk about as a platform as a whole, this is more sufficient. In case there may be multiple NetWeaver platforms for each module. Let's say like SAP NetWeaver platform is available only from the BI standpoint. SAP NetWeaver is available only for SRM, Supplier Relationship Management. SAP NetWeaver is available only for CRM. Multiple NetWeaver platforms tied up together, which brings you the entire lifecycle management of the whole SAP tool. So that's where, when you say on the right side of the bar on the whole diagram, you see the lifecycle management. On the left side, you see composite application. Okay, what is the difference between these two? Lifecycle management, all the way the end-to-end process from the raw data till the people integration, the complete set is called lifecycle management of the data. Composite application framework, different NetWeaver stacks which combine and integrate to run a business scenario, which is called a composite application framework. You can also say, like, technically there are a lot of different tools which collaborate here. Technically there are a lot of different products which collaborate here. Functionally there can be different modules like SRM, CRM, supply chain, which can also combine here to develop the entire business process here. So this is what the SAP NetWeaver platform. In this, a small piece is called business intelligence, which was plugged out, and we are going to have a detailed conversation on the SAP BW backend, SAP BW frontend, and obviously a lot of add-ons we are talking about. Okay, what is the new structure of the SAP NetWeaver platform? There is one more bar here, which says a small space for SAP business objects, which is nothing but which purely deals with business objects, tools and products and reporting techniques there. So SAP business objects also has taken place and position in the SAP NetWeaver platform, which means it is also a part of the information integration where you deal with a lot of business data up and down. So, now coming to the components of the IT practices. This is more detail about what are the practices which are leveraged on the real-time world and how the data has been handled with the different type of IT practices. Okay. Why we are really bothered about NetWeaver platform and IT practices? SAP BW, when we talk about SAP BW, it purely deals not only with the data. I mean, most of the time when people in the market, people in the consulting world, when they say SAP BW, they always say, like, talking about data modeling and the data loading, data extraction. The world doesn't end there. SAP BW, it's only a portion of that is an ETL process. The rest of them is all related to IT practices, which talks about process, which talks about the data cleansing, which talks about the validity of the data, which talks about the delivery of the data in a proper governed manner, and it also talks about the end user interface channelization of the data. So there are a lot of IT practices which involved in SAP BW. So purely ETL, which is nothing but extraction, transformation, loading, that's only not the SAP BW system. There are a lot of other practices which is also involved in the SAP BW system. So being a pure BW consultant, a technical consultant, ETL process is fair enough to handle a project actually. But if you're going in for a data modeling, or when you're going in for an architecture position, or when you're going in as a BI strategist or those type of position really needs some hands-on experience and some hands-on information about IT practices and business process. And more or less, you can also tell, like, you need to know some of the modules like SRM, CRM, supply chain, SD, FICO, a lot of modules are there. You typically need to know the business process. I mean, from the BW side, you really need not know like each and every end tables of each module, but at least the process. Let's say, like for an example, in an IT practice, there is a sales and distribution implementation, and a PW has been implemented to get some couple of reports on SD. So in that case, you need to know a little bit of SD process, sales and distribution process. Process in sense like two type of process. One is the traditional process which is already running in the company, and number two is the product process, the SAP SD module product process. That's the number two process. And apart from them, you have to know the business information management, how the data of SD is coming into the BW world, which has to be tied up with the business process and then brought into the system. So that's what they call it as a business information management. You basically be a management guy, and you also be a techno-functional guy, and also know the product, how the BW is dealing with, and also you'll be knowing like what type of SD process is available in the module actually as such. On talking about BIM, which is the business information management, you certainly go into the user productivity and enablement. When you talk about user productivity enablement, the end result, what exactly has to be delivered to the users? Okay, you were talking about some SD process, and now you know the traditional business process, now you know the SAP SD process, and now you know the data handling in the BI side. And using all these, what are you really going to give the user productivity enablement? Like what user is going to see? In BW world, you call it as reports. That's what you provide them as an end result. Okay, on seeing the report, what exactly has to be taken from the data standpoint? There should be a proper governance on the data. You see some legacy data, you see some source information available. Using BIM, you load the data, you process the data in the BW system, you write some SD reports, and you provide it to the users. And now it's the chance for the users to really validate and govern the data. So there should be some terminologies and strategies available in order to check out whether the data available in the SAP is equivalent to the process what they practice in the IT side. So that's what they call it as an application governance. Service-oriented architecture, design and deployment. Here comes the real technical platform where what type of tool, what type of technology, and what type of data warehousing, what type of connectivity, what type of integration, what type of third-party interfaces, and what all needs to be done in order to program the first three steps at the top actually. So that's what they call it as service-oriented architecture. SOA, by definition, it has its own huge structure behind the scene, but I'm just giving you a very brief definition at the top right now. And finally, go in for the lifecycle management, the complete end-to-end process, which covers including the IT process, which covers including the IT practices. That's called the lifecycle management. This is in detail, like from the IT practices, what SAP NetWeaver platform really deals with. So, I mean, a couple of slides will be a little theoretical, but just wanted to give a brief overview what exactly is SAP BW. Because like when we jump into the product, when we jump into a couple of slides on the real features available on the back end and the front end, SAP BW is not only ETL, it's also dealing with some of the IT practices in collaboration with SAP NetWeaver. That's what I'm trying to impose to you guys. Always think when they say BW, it doesn't matter ETL. It's like an IT practice with the SAP NetWeaver collaboration. Okay. So from the previous slide to the next slide, the first stack is being taken in detail. What exactly it deals with? Business information management. As I told you earlier, data is available outside in a legacy or in SAP, any application, ERP or R3 system or ECC system. Now, when they say it's a BIM, it purely determines a standard formatted way of handling the data. In our case, the standard formatted handling of data is going to be through SAP BW, and that's where they have the three modules on it. One is the backend, which is the enterprise data warehousing, and they have the front end, which is the reporting, and obviously the third one is the add-on. In this case, they have the planning add-on in it actually. So that's where they are dealing with. Coming into detail with what all BI scenarios in the SAP NetWeaver. Now, this tells you more about the in-house features of the product. Okay, when I say in-house features of the product is what exactly can be done with the front end, what exactly can be done with the back end, and what exactly can be done with the add-on. So there should be some features available for each of these areas actually. So when you say front end, there are a couple of areas where you can do formatted reporting like crystal reports and tabular reports. You can also do ad hoc analysis. Ad hoc analysis, by the name itself, users can create their own reports and test by themselves and use it for comparison. So that's called ad hoc analysis. And you can also create a report using Excel integration. You can also create a report using BI application. When I say model-driven BI application, you have some tools and techniques where you can create reports on the fly where it can drag you to the data to which level you want, to any level of granularity. That's what they mean. So these are the different areas or different features where a front end can be dealt with. Typically, like when we are going to talk about the front end reports, I'll be dealing more about the Excel interface reports. We'll be dealing more about the formatting report, which is a report designer, and we'll be also dealing with some of the model-driven BI applications, and also we'll be delivering a lot of user productivity, which is nothing but the portal integration, how the report is published to a UI, which is at the top. So now, after hearing all these terminologies, you can visualize what I'm really talking about from the NetWeaver stack, which is the process integration at the top, where the real user interface comes into picture. So when you say user interface behind the scene, there is nothing but a report running behind the scene. So this report can be in a formatted report like Crystal or like a report designer, or an Excel report, which is nothing but in an Excel interface, or a BI-driven BI application report, which is nothing but a third-party interface report, or an ad hoc report, which is created by the users. So only these are the scenarios it can be in a UI in the top of the process integration in the NetWeaver stack. So this is more dealing with on the front-end part. Now, before getting into the middle one, let me go to the last one, which is nothing but the enterprise data warehousing, which is very important from the back-end standpoint. Okay. When I say enterprise data warehousing, immediately there comes the ETL process. So now you can visualize where am I really ETL is in the picture. So when they say SAP NetWeaver, SAP NetWeaver BW, ETL is just a pinch position in the whole stack. So BW is nothing but a lot of other IT practices which comes into the picture apart from ETL. Now the backend is one of the positioned place in the NetWeaver stack. So SAP Enterprise Data Warehousing deals with a lot of performance analytics, which is nothing but high leverage reports running in the system, and data modeling capabilities, which is nothing but you are talking about the real backend data model, data transfer processes, how the ETL is going to transfer the data from the source system to the BW system, real-time data acquisition. There are a lot of systems which are available in the market like Dun & Bradstreet or Ernst & Young. Those type of systems supply real-time market information. So SAP BW also have interfaces to bring those type of data into the system. So there is a specific ETL process available for that. And at last, you talk about ETL, you talk about data loading, you talk about data transfer, modeling capabilities and analytics, front-end reporting, back-end reporting, Excel reporting. There should be an area to monitor all these things. There should be an area to, really have an eye-based analysis where to make sure everything is running in CAD. And that's where SAP BW also have a provision, something called web-based administrator cockpit, where you try to manage and monitor all the data going in and out of the system. So that's where in detail you have the scenarios on NetWeaver 2004S. Do you guys have any questions up to here? Now I think you guys would have a real good picture what exactly SAP BW deals with in the SAP NetWeaver stack as a whole. Okay. Now jumping into the real world on the enterprise data warehousing. So this deals mostly about the back end of the system, which tells you the features, which tells you the capabilities, which tells you the ETL process, which tells you the data modeling, the star schema modeling, which tells you the architecture of the BI, and which also tells you how a process is being data modeled, okay? How the process is data modeled in the SAP BW system. When I say process data model in SAP BW system, it is nothing but there may be plenty of process in the business world. You can call it as an inventory management, you can call it as a financial management, you can call it as a controlling management, fund management, grants management, there are material management, there are a lot of different processes available. How those process management are data modeled in the SAP BW system, that's where we call it as the enterprise data warehousing, the ETL process. E stands for extraction, T stands for transformation, and L stands for loading. So enterprise data warehousing purely comprises of ETL process. Okay, when you say ETL process purely determines the exact data model of a process. Okay, what is data model? There is some kind of a technique or some kind of a strategy which has to be followed formatically in order to structure a data. So that's where they call it as a data model. So you basically tell the BW system, hey, there is inventory management data available in system A, system B, system C, and I want those systems data to be available in the BW system in a predefined format, like a vertical format or a horizontal format in sense, like these horizontal vertical format which I'm talking about, which is purely business definitions. Okay. Now, before getting the data into the BW system, you tell the BW system and you model the BW system in such a way where business definition and formats are applicable to these data before storing in the data warehousing. So that's where the entire process goes in. So when you try to bring the business definition and business process in a predefined formatted manner, you have something called data model, and that data model is called the star schema, which is a very important terminology in the SAP BW system. So star schema model is nothing but a predefined structured format, and which is nothing but a proprietary product model in the SAP BW world, where all the definitions of the data model is just behind the star schema. So whenever any BW person talks about the data model, it will be a star schema model from the SAP BW side. There you go. So it talks about mostly on the data modeling and the flexibility, how the tool is really helpful in so many ways. Data modeling tool, there are a lot of data modeling tools available in the market, like even Oracle has its own data modeling tool, Teradata has its own data modeling tool, Informatica has its own data modeling tool. There are a lot of different terminologies have the data modeling tool. The star schema model is purely available on the SAP BW system. There are a lot of other schemas available in so many other tools available in the market, but SAP has been very successful with the star schema modeling through so many years in this market. So when you say star schema modeling, it's just nothing but the definition of ETL process. So a data model purely tells what type of star schema is available. In order to know what type of star schema, you really talk about like what are the objects present in the star schema. So that's where you dig deep into the model actually. So when you say data modeling, there is a place in the SAP BW system where you can really handle the data modeling, and that's called the administrative workbench. So the right-hand screen, which is a small screenshot, blue in color, they call it as a data modeling workbench. And that's the place where you really model your star schema based on the business definition and the formatted structure of the data. So we call it as a remodeling. We call it as a modeling toolbox. So modeling toolbox clearly defines the definition of each object in the BW system. Okay, before getting into objects, when I say objects, there are a lot of different objects available in the SAP BW system. Let me put it very clearly. The objects are classified into two. One is the master data object and one is the transaction data object. In any data modeling tool in the market, like not only SAP BW system, any data modeling, any data warehousing tool, typically I should be very specific, data warehousing tool, there are two definitions of an object. One is the master data and one is the transaction data. Master data handles all the master data of the enterprise, and transaction data handles all the operational level of data of the enterprise. And moreover, master data doesn't change much, and transaction data changes very often based on the business operations on day-to-day, daily basis. So data modeling in the BW system is covered basically around these two areas, your master data and the transaction data. And all the properties, all the inherited functionalities are leveraged based on these two objects, which is the master data and the transaction data. Okay. In the BW world, they call it as a master data, but there is a terminology for master data. They call it as info objects. And whenever there is a place which is called info object, it is nothing but a master data. Whenever there is a place where it is called transaction data, it is also called an info object, right? That's a little more confusing, right? Okay, now what is an info object? An info object is a master data where it is classified into two based on the data modeling. Okay, what are the classifications? What are the two classifications? An info object can be a characteristics, an info object can be a key figure. So whenever we talk about info objects as a characteristics, those are called master data. Whenever we talk about info objects based on transaction data, those are called key figures. So these are the two definitions. So you got to be very clear based on the definitions of the info objects. So whenever I say about characteristics, it is nothing but a master data. Whenever I say key figures, it is nothing but a transaction data. So now we are getting a little more detail on the term. I mean, I'm not going to go more detail than this on today's session because that will lead into a lot of confusion. But I'm just trying to present all the terminologies, whatever we see on the data modeling. So right now, as of now, we have seen data modeling, we have seen ETL process, we have seen star schema modeling, we have heard about info objects. Info objects is nothing but characteristics and the key figures. Characteristics is nothing but let's say, for an example, customer name, customer address, and vendor name, vendor address. Those are all characteristics. Sales amount, sales quantity. Okay. I hear someone. Sales quantity, sales value, net price, any financial posting value, those are all called key figures. So these type of terminologies will keep rotating all the way down every session, like, whenever we talk about the back end of the system. Okay. Now, getting into the slide, these characteristics and key figures basically are not usable unless you predefine and format it in a structural manner. Okay. How these info objects are formatted? So there should be a way to format these data based on the business definition, right? So these info objects are stored into a container which is called info cubes, or it can also be stored in data store objects. Now, what are these differences between info cubes and DSOs? I mean, formerly they call it as ODS. Now it's called DSO, data store objects. What are info cubes and what are data store objects? Typically, like the data, the business data, when it is extracted from the source system or from the ECC or R3 or any legacy system, comes into the BW environment and gets stored in some formatted tables. So those formatted tables are defined by the business structure definitions. So those data are stored in the DSOs, which is nothing but the data store objects, or it can also be stored in the info cubes. So how a data model can be designed and how it can be arrived, knowing like data has to be stored in info cubes or data has to be stored in data store objects. Okay. Now let's assume like we know what are the properties an info cube can provide. What are the properties can a data store object can provide? And now you know like what type of report a user really needs. Let's assume like this is a scenario. Now a real data model guy, like a BW person who is a backend guy, he designs the data model, the star schema model in such a way where these characteristics and key figures get stored the data in the info cubes or the DSOs based on the reporting definition. For an instance, let's say there is a flat report where a manager wants to see all the data, whatever is all the products sales, whatever is sold up to date, which is like something like a daily sales report, which is a really normalized formatted data, which is something like an Excel report. Now, in that case, you would say this report is more detailed in a line item level reporting. In that case, you store the data in the data store objects. And that's where you think a data model should be such a way like, the data, the info objects, which is nothing but the characteristics and key figures, get stored in the data store objects. Okay. Now you said like all the detailed reporting, line item level reporting, which is more details, a lot of details, those type of data stores and the data store objects, which is really fair enough. And what does the info cube stores? Let's say an highly aggregated and formatted data, aggregated in sense like, you don't store daily data into the info cube. You basically store aggregated data, something like a weekly data, something like a monthly data or yearly data, those type of aggregated information gets stored in info cubes. Why there is a difference between these two? A report can be an operational level reporting, which is something like a line item level reporting, more details, lot of details. A report can also be an analytical report, which is nothing but aggregated level information. The same manager wants to see a data on weekly basis, wants to see a data on monthly basis. In that case, you load the data again from the DSO to the info cube and aggregate it on weekly basis. So you write two reports, one report writing from the info cube, another report writing from the DSO. So the first report writing from the info cube will have the aggregated information, which is nothing but a weekly, monthly, or a yearly report. And the second report, which is run out of a DSO, which is nothing but a daily report, which has a lot of details on it. So this type of differentiation is available between the data targets. Well, what is data targets? Now this is something new. Data target is nothing but a place where the data finally gets stored. In this case, it's going to be a DSO or info cube. Now the terminologies are getting a little more detailed. You said data targets, but there should be something called data source also, right? Okay, what is a data source? Data source, by the name itself, clearly tells you there is a table somewhere on the source system, which is readily available and which has all the information of the data what we really require for the data modeling. And that piece of data is called data source. Typically, like, data target has the end data stored in the input cube, and data source is nothing but the source data which is available in the source system in the table format or the structured format, which is residing in two different systems. So there should be a link between the data source and the data target, and that's where that link is called the ETL, which is nothing but the data modeling, and that ETL is nothing but the star schema modeling. So this is what the explanation which I try to give everywhere. People who talks about the BW data modeling, BW backend, they always talk about the data source, they always talk about the data target, they always talk about the data modeling, which is the ETL process, and which is nothing but built on a model, which is built on a schema called star schema model. So that's where, the whole picture comes into the area called modeling the EDW. Now, there are a couple of features which is available. So,
Vijay, I'm sorry
yeah.
to disturb. I have a question here.
Sure.
We had a few sessions before with another gentleman, and while he was explaining the initial class, he said in SAP the star schema doesn't work. I mean, because the transaction data is inside the cube, and I mean, everything is inside the cube, so it becomes very difficult, or other systems cannot access that information. So we use something called an extended star schema.
Yeah, I'm coming to that question. I'm coming to that point actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the initially this is the point. Star schema is nothing but the extensive feature of the master data available to the other systems, right? But when that feature is not available, the whole concept is being enhanced to a way where other systems can start extracting data from the star schema. And that's where they brought in a concept called extended star schema. So I'm coming to that point. See, I'm trying to leverage the whole piece, one by one. So I don't know, like, what type of, what level of discussion you had before, but I'm just trying to take one at a time. So,
No problem.
yeah. So let me give a very detailed example, like here. Since you raised the point called extended star schema, okay, the whole modeling concept with the help of InfoObjects, which is built based on the input cubes and the DSO, there is a certain level of leverage of the characteristics, which is nothing but the master data. So this master data has to be used everywhere on the reports. So once the star schema came into the picture, the leverage of this master data in the reporting layer was purely precise. So SAP thought, why don't we enhance the features of these master data in the data modeling itself, and which also includes in the part of the feature of the data modeling itself. So that's where they came up with a terminology called extended star schema, and then they tried to leverage all the bits and pieces of master data all the way to the reporting layer. So, certain amount of features which was available initially when the star schema was built was not totally user-friendly and usability on the reporting layer. And they initially enhanced the whole star schema to something called extended star schema, where the properties of master data were so globalized enough where the reporting layer can try to leverage all those properties. So that's where they call it as an extended star schema. I mean, a couple of detailed pictures I still have in some of my old presentation. I can even share after the line. So when we get there, I'll totally try to discuss this point again. But which is a very valid point. I think whoever shared something called extended star schema, which is really a very valid point from the BW modeling standpoint. Yeah. So here you see something called remodeling toolbox, and something. I mean, these are some of the features which is available from the data modeling. Okay. One interesting thing is when an input cube is designed in the data modeling world, in the older versions of SAP BW system, this input cube was not able to change once a predefined business formatting definition was set to this input cube. Now, in later versions of SAP after BW 3.5 and BI 7.0, 701, 702, and up to latest version, this info cube, where even after which has been defined and designed as per the business definition, now there are options available in order that you can change, even with the data I'm talking about. Let's take a very traditional example. In an Oracle table, whenever there is a data, and let's say like millions of data is available in the table, and suddenly businesses comes out and tells you like you need to basically enhance the table, which is nothing but adding a couple of fields and couple of attributes to it. By the end of the day, you try to basically drop the table and reload it again in order to make sure the new structure of the table. In that case, in the data modeling, even if there are millions of records in the info cube, by the help of remodeling technique, you can try to change the structure of the cube based on the business definition, and then with the data in it, and then try to handle the new changes into the info cube. That's where this particular feature is available in it. I'm not really going very detailed into it. Probably like a couple of sessions that we'll be looking after when we looking at more in the administrative workbench screens like this, in fact. And some features available, which is nothing but ODS. ODS is like the old terminology. Now they are handling a data store object, which they call it as a DS store. And couple of interesting things. There is a concept called info sets. Okay, let me be very clear. This is a new terminology called info sets. They also call something called multi-providers. Okay, you say like data is loading into cubes, data is loading into data store objects. Let's say that, I guess you guys hear me, right? I see there is an internet application problem.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, sounds good. No problem.
We can hear you.
Okay, so what happens like if a manager needs the data from an analytical oriented and also from the detail oriented? In that case, you need to combine the info cube and the source. Those type of techniques are available using a terminology called multi-providers, which is nothing but you handle multiple cubes or multiple DSOs and then define a structure where you can write a report out of those structures, which is combining many data targets in one place. So those type of options are available on the data modeling. Info sets, it's something like a old technique where you make something like an outer join or inner join using the two info cubes or two DSOs. Based on the joins, you define your structure and then write a report out of it. Previously, like these days, people are not using info sets. They are always going only for multi-providers because multi-providers have much more flexibility, and all the properties used in the external star schema can be leveraged in multi-providers. Where info sets does not have that type of feasibility. So, but still it comes under the terminology in the data modeling. So, data modeling purely not only deals with info objects, which is nothing but characteristics and key figures. It also deals with info cubes. It also deals with data store objects. It deals with multi-providers where it combines many info cubes and DSOs together. So those type of different areas come under data modeling. Okay, now we had the entire picture of data modeling. There should be a way to handle the data. So there comes the ETL process into it. When you say data acquisition, you talk about the real data source, the sourcing of data. Sourcing of data always tells you where exactly the data is available in the system, whether it can be in the BW system itself or it can be any external system from SAP ECC or R3 or Oracle. It can also be any universal direct connect system. You talk about any web services, you talk about any websites. Data can be available in any format. These data in a predefined manner has to be brought into the BW system using a technique which is called data acquisition. This is the letter E in the ETL process, which we call it as an extraction. So BW has provided a process where you can extract data from the source system and use those data into the BW system with the help of data modeling with the data architecture using multiple info cubes and DSOs and info objects, you predefine the data and then store those data into the info cubes and then use it for the reporting. So all the way down the lane. So initially the extraction of data coming from the source system, basically it's called data acquisition. So you basically define those data in the source system and make those data available on the BW system. So there should be an interface between these two, source system and the BW system. So the interface which is really acting between these two are called data source extractors. So you got to be very clear on the definition. Extractors. Extractor is the word where it deals with the real functionality of pulling the data from the external source system into the BW system, and that's where they call extractors. Now these extractors, when I talk about extractors, these extractors are available on the BW system, okay? And where are these extractors are coming from? They are basically coming from the source system, which in sense the extractors are permanently available in the source system. Let's take a very rapid example. SAP, there is a module called material management, and there are a lot of processes in the materials management. You have a goods receipt, you have purchase orders, you have goods issue, a lot of different processes. Let's take an easy example, purchase order. So there are a lot of purchase orders being created in the SAP ECC system. Somewhere these purchase orders are stored in the table. So those table of data are combined into a predefined structure and converted into an extractor, and that extractor is stored in the source system. That extractor is very well communicatable to the SAP BW system. So from the SAP BW system, you call that extractors and make that extractor to work in such a way it pulls the data from the underlying purchase order tables and give it to the BW system. That's the work of the data acquisition. And that's where the end of the data acquisition, because the data is already extracted from the source system and it is brought to the SAP BW system. Okay, this process of data acquisition is taking place through multiple connectors. The scenario is like any system can talk with any system. That's where today's world is. But there should be something like an interface or something like a connectivity or something like a physical connectivity to the system. So these type of connectivities are already available in the SAP products. Let's say for an example, in an Oracle system, SAP BW has their own connector to touch base with the Oracle system. What happens to an SAP system itself? SAP BW system, when it communicates with an other SAP system, by default, both SAP systems knows each other and tries to talk with each other using a form of IDOCs. That's a different type of technology they have. But in a sense, in the BW system, you basically need to configure the source system's name and address and all those things. And in the source system, you basically need to configure the SAP BW systems, source and IP and all those things. Once these two systems are configured, now these two systems can try to talk to each other. There are features and possibility available, scenarios available in SAP BW system where you can try to activate those extractors in the source system and start pulling out the data using the data acquisition technique. When these connectors, when these system connections are all configured successfully, now BW system is very well activated in order to pull the data from the source system using these extractors. Okay, now these extractors are basically built only for predefined existing standard tables available in the source system. What happens if there is an external data coming from? What happens when there is a web service data coming from another system where there are no standard extractors, where there are no extractors available? SAP BW is also provided an opportunity where you can create custom defined extractors for those type of data and using a different connectors in order to bring those type of data into the BW system. So those type of connectors are already available in the BW system. And those type of extractors can also be defined in the BW system in order to pull those type of non-related data which is other than the source system. For instance, let's say a flat file, a notepad of data coming in. SAP BW has a technique where you can create an extractor based on the flat file and try to pull that flat file data into the BW system using a connector. So these type of different flexibilities are available based on data acquisition. So what happens when there is no direct system connectivity? There is a feasibility on this product where you can also have remote access to another SAP system, another non-SAP system, and you can pull the data, whether it can be a master data or whether it can be a transaction data from the source system. So these type of different capabilities are available, in order to do a data acquisition, which brings the data all the way from the source system. So now we have seen a concept called extractors, which really tells you about the data acquisition. And these extractors are available in the source system, which is very fair enough. But the extractors, when it is coming into the BW system and when it tries to pull the data using the data acquisition process, those extractors are no more called extractors in the BW system. Extractors are called extractors only in the source system because they are permanently available in the source system. But when the extractor starts pulling the data in the BW system, then the word extractor is called data source. Now you have data source in the BW system, and obviously you have data targets in the BW system, which is nothing but the info cube and the DSO and the info object and all those things. There should be a rule between loading the data from the data source to the data targets. There should be a way where the business definition really dominates the whole data cleansing as per the data model in the ETL tool. So the data passing of data from the data source to the data target passes through a technique called transformation, which is the letter T in the ETL process. Okay, now you're talking about transformation. Transformation is nothing but, you really and convert the data as per the definition of the business from the raw format to the business format. Okay, what is the raw format and what is the business format? The raw format is nothing but the data which is available in the source table. For instance, we are talking about the purchase order. Purchase order has like 20 number of transaction tables and master data tables available in the ECC system. Now, these data are clubbed and formulated into an extractor structure and pushed to the BW system. Now, this data is available in a raw format in the data source in the BW system. So this raw format cannot be directly loaded into the info cube or any data target. You can still load, provided if a reporting requirement is requested only on a raw format, yeah, you can definitely load. But from the reporting definition standpoint, all the report definitions are based on business definitions. So your raw data has to be formulated in such a way into a business definition format and then loaded into the data target. Now that formulation is taken place using transformation. So SAP BW has a lot of different techniques and terminologies and different methods to transform the data. You can handle the transformation data using a direct mapping, which is nothing but you have a set of library functions. You can convert, you can transform, you can write SQL codes, or you can also have a placeholder where you write some ABAP codes and then transform the data and then throw to the data target. Or before loading the raw data into the data target, you make a transformation by doing a lookup with another data target and then load it to the target where you really want to. So that type of lookup functionalities can also be done. So these type of different areas you can really play around with the transformation, and that's called the transformation in the ETL tool. So we were talking about extractors in the source system. We're talking about data source in the BW system, and which is nothing but the data acquisition. And then we are talking about the data transforming to the data target using different methods in the transformation. So these are the different areas where you'll be covering on the BW backend side. Oh, obviously the next slide clearly tells about the transformation concept. Okay. the interesting thing is it is a graphical UI, and as per the picture what you see here, this is what you'll see in the backend system. And the arrow marks which you see like going up and down, these are all direct mappings. Basically the raw format is directly mapped to the target. So the first table which you see here is nothing but the data source, which is nothing but the extractor coming from the source system. Okay, and now this table which you see is the data target, which is nothing but an info cube. Now, what is in between? There is some sort of rules which is written in the transformation, and these type of rules can be either written with the help of library functions, which is very easily handleable, or it can also be written with the help of codes. Codes in sense like I'm talking about ABAP codes. Since it's an SAP product, and since it's an SAP box or SAP product, ABAP is one of the most commonly used language in the SAP world. So we make use of something called small programs where it converts a raw format into a data targeted format using with the help of business definition. Okay, what are the different ways you can write your transformations? There are 3 ways where SAP allows you to write your transformation. 4 ways in sense I would say. One is I'm talking about the library functions, which is something like a predefined library functions. We will discuss more in detail when we are looking in about transformation. Another, all the rest of the 3 of them are basically written in terms of ABAP code. When you see a little top here, oh, okay, one more thing, unit conversions, all the library functions can also be handled for unit conversions. So that's also a possibility is there. So that's one of the way, like, you can convert from kilogram to, pounds and from pounds. So, various multiple, and for currency conversion, those type of things can be handled using unit conversions. And those are also part of the library functions actually, which is very fair enough. Apart from that, I'm talking about some ABAP codes where, SAP is more flexible in using ABAP code to transform the data from raw format to data targeted format. There are a couple of places where you write these data. The place where I'm highlighting here, you call it as routines. So which means you write some small routines in the data model itself, in the transformation area, where it makes the real transformation from the raw to the business formatted data. There are different ways of transformation routines. One is you call it as a start routine, and one is you call it as an end routine, and one you call it as an export routine, which is not shown here. Okay, what are the different ways of transformation? Okay, my extractor is pulling data from the source system, which is nothing but a data source in the BW system, fair enough. And this data source data has to load into my info cube, which is the data target, which is fair enough. Now, the transformation of data from raw format to business formatted data, before loading there should be, before loading into the info cube, there should be some changes in the data. And that's where you write your codes in a place called start routine at the top, where after loading the data into the data target, there should be some changes happening to the data. That type of code changes will be written in a place called end routine. Okay. For instance, you can also have some changes before coming in. You can also have changes after coming in, which is really fair enough. In the real-time world, most of the customers, they do. Okay. These are the 2 types of transformations. Before loading, you do some changes. After loading, you do some changes. Okay. What is something called export routine? Okay. I don't want to do anything before loading. I don't want to do anything after loading. But there should be some changes to the data which is really irrelevant on the format what we have, but I need to have some lookup, or I need to have some comparison of data which is already available in another data target before loading into this info cube. Those type of things will be handled using ABAP codes, but in an area called export routine, which is nothing but one-to-one field. Every field is being controlled using that export routine. So you write simple pieces of small codes for each field one at a time, so that it does the job of transformation. So that's where you talk about the transformation. So overall, in the brief picture on the ETL process, you talk about the extractors, which is the data source, and you have the data source in the BW system, and now you transform the data, whatever the data is coming in the data source, to the data target. Now you made all the transformations available. Now, in order to instigate this process, there should be some kind of a technique where you have to start working on the transformation and start loading the data. And that comes the part L in the ETL, where SAP BW has some features and has some flexibilities to instigate, has a mechanism which starts the process of data loading into the data target. And that's where they call it the data transfer process. It's just nothing but they call it as a DTP. DTP is nothing but, you load the data from the data source to the data target, which is nothing but the letter L in the ETL process. There you go. The next slide you have as a DTP. So this basically is a mechanism to load the data from the data source to the data target. Now, when you say data loading, in the BW system, there are two types of loading taking place. One is the data source loading, which is nothing but the extraction of data from the source system to the BW system. That's also called data loading, right? From the data transfer standpoint, you call it as data loading the data from the source system to the BW data source, which is nothing but the extractor is pulling the data and pushing the data to the data source in the BW system. That's called the loading of data in the source system. The second level is called the data transfer process, which is nothing but loading the data from the data source and up to the data modeling layers. When I say data modeling layers, it can be multiple data modeling layers. In sense, you can have like 2-3 layers of ODSs, and then you can have 2-3 layers of info cubes. Let's say like a real transaction data, a sales data is coming all the way from the source system through one level of DSO, and you basically leverage that level of DSO to the next level by doing some lookups, and you basically finally load those data into the info cube. So in this case, you have 3 levels of data loading in the ETL process. So in an example also, like why I'm saying like 3 levels. So this way of thinking about like how many levels of data layer, how many levels of data modeling architecture has to be planned, how many level of staging has to be taking place. These type of different on and off iteration process purely comes based on the experience and based on what type of process you're dealing with. For an instance, let's say like you're dealing with sales order transaction data. Sales order transaction data, you basically have some sort of 3 staging process. One is you bring the data to the data source extractor, you load it to a DSO, and you load it to a second level DSO by doing some master data lookups, and finally you load it to an info cube. So these type of decision making with the help of business and finding out what is the right formatted data, and then preparing a staging process and setting a data modeling in the whole picture, which entirely deals with the data flow of the whole process in the BW system. This is called data modeling. So when this data modeling is really decided, you're pretty much ready for developing the architecture in the data model in the BW system. So when you say like data modeling, when you say like ETL process, when you say like architecture, you typically talk about the marrying of data with the process in the BW system. That's where you come the word called staging. You typically want to know like whether it's going to be a 1 staging level, and then after the first staging level you write a report, or you move to the second staging level and write your report, or you move to the third staging level and write your report. It depends upon the real requirement or what level of data you need. So these type of staging layers are called data warehousing layers actually. Data warehousing layers which combines only with DSOs are called ODS layers. Data warehousing layers which combines with DSOs and info cubes are called multi-dimensional layers. Data warehousing layers which combines with standard architecture are called architect data marts. Okay, now the brief definition of architect data marts. These architected data marts are predefined staged process or predefined data model which is already available in the BW system. You really don't build everything from scratch. You basically activate the data mart and use it for your process. So that's called data mart, which is something like a predefined scenario already available in the BW system. And those type of things are available in a bucket called business content in the SAP BW system. Let me come to the business content a little later. See, initially I told about extractors are permanently available on the SAP source system. Like that, there are some objects which are available permanently in the BW system, which are standard objects, and those are called business content actually. So SAP has provided an opportunity where you can utilize those objects in the BW system based on what process you are working on in the extractor level. So depending on that, you try to leverage those functionality and then add your own customized enhancement at the top of it and try to load your data in the staging process. So on and off, you can also use your business content and leverage your BW system. You can also develop all the way from the scratch and use your BW system, or you can use a combination of standard business content and customized enhancement and then load your data and then use it for the BW system. There are different ways you can handle your system. So putting up all these together, talking about ETL process, talking about staging process, talking about data warehousing layer, and talking about architecture data modes, everything in a bundle put together is called data modeling, which is nothing but the DI architecture. Coming to the DTP again. DTP is the place where it helps you to transform the data from the source system to the data target. Okay, I told two levels of extraction. One is loading in from the source system to the BW. In the BW itself, you take the data to multiple layers, which is nothing but multiple staging process, and then load the data. The process of extracting the data from the source system to the BW, which is the very first staging layer, and that is done using a mechanism called info package. Okay, that is not changed all the way from years actually from the old version. It is done by info package. The process of loading the data from the data source all the way to the staging area at the top, it is done by DTP, which is called data transfer process. So you extract the data using info package, you do all your transformation and load the data to multiple staging area based on your requirement, based on your aggregation of data to the DTP. So DTP helps you to load the data from the data source all the way to many layers at the top. Okay, there are different features and different functionalities available. You can load the entire set of data, which is something called full update. You can load only the changed data, which is nothing but something like a delta mechanism. You filter some of the parameters and load only one set of data to the data target, so you can also do filtering. And apart from that, you can also create some buffers or create some temporary space to load or to store any of the error data loads when at the time of data loading. So you can handle some particular set of data during the time of loading. See, after all, this is also a system, so there may be errors when loading a data, which is nothing but a raw format is coming in a very undefined manner, and you have a set of rules written on the transformation. So that data is not really, trying to adjust according to the rules. Then your load fails. Then you got to try to capture and debug and troubleshoot your data load accordingly, and then start your load again. So these type of process going back and forth can be done with the help of DTP. And apart from that, there are a lot of other features also available with the help of DTP. So the data flow control is done only by DTP all the way up to the ladder. Okay, this is a very good picture, like, how to check on the data architecture. Okay, on a whole, this is the SAP Native BI intelligence. On the early slides, we have seen like this is one of the small bots called SAP BI on the Native stack, and that small box has a lot of functionality here to be shown here. Okay, let's be very brief here. The whole bottom stack is nothing but the SAP source system. I mean, here it says SAP source system. Typically, it can be any source system. It can be any Oracle, any Linux, or any Unix, any system. Based on that, you make sure whether this data has to be a real-time update or it has to be anything like something like a delta update, which is nothing but, what do you mean by delta update? Let's say, for an instance, financial transactions. There are a huge number of general ledger data available. Simply by loading the data, you cannot do something like a full update loading from the ECC system or any source system to the BW, which will really kill the whole process. In that case, you make sure you load only delta data to the BW system. Those type of decision making will be given by the business people, and based on the experience, you would know what type of data has to be loaded in what mechanism. So SAP BW system, all the BW applications, SAP has given a proper documentation in such a way, like, for instance, inventory management. Inventory management can be done only with these type of loading mechanisms. Financial management can be done only these type of loading mechanisms. Those type of formatted procedures are already available in the SAP products. So using with the help of those information, you try to decide like how the loading mechanism needs to be. Okay, here is the position. The first box is nothing but the source system area. The second box is nothing but the BW area. The moment when the extractor runs and it pulls the data, it gets into the BW system here, which is the first staging area called PSA. They call it as a persistent staging area. So this is the area where you see the first staged data. So whatever data you see in the extractor here in the source system will be available here. And this loading, the first level of loading, is done using the info package, where info package is nothing but which controls the flow of data from the extractor source system to the BW. So PSA, which is nothing but the persistent staging area, is the first stage loading of data. Now, whatever data you see in the raw format here will be available. Here, this is a different system, which is a third-party or source system. But here, it's the BW system. Whatever data you see here, it is available here on the same raw format. Now, using your transformations and using your DTPs, which is the data transfer process, this PSA is called data source right now. Using your DTP and using your transformations with a lot of rules and routines and some filtering of data in the DTP, you basically load the data to multiple staging areas. For instance, it can be directly to a DSO and you can write a report out of it, or it can load it to multiple data warehouse layer. It is nothing but a couple of DSOs and finally to a cube and write that cube to a report. So it can also be handled in such a way. So different scenarios are available based on the process we are working on. And obviously, multiple data warehousing layer combines together, which takes you to an architected data mart, where you have a predefined data package to handle your set of data. Now, this is the entire picture how the data flow really works in the BW system. So let me clearly explain one more time, because this is very important from the ETL standpoint. From the source system, using an extractor, it is loaded into the first staging area called the PSA, which is nothing but the data source. And the raw data which is available here, now it is available in the BW system. And once the raw data is available here, you can basically schedule, or you can basically write or transform for the data with the help of routines or any rules, and then load the data using DTP to the top layers. It can be using multiple data warehouse layers, or it can be also to any data store object or any cube directly. So based on your process and scenarios, it works on. Okay, now you said like there is something called delta Q here. Okay, eventually you're talking about, let's say, general ledger data. You always load only delta records coming in, only change records of a day coming in, which is very fair enough using info package. At the same time, you also tell the DTP to load only the changed records from the data source to the layer of the top, so that you don't want to really subside the system here. So the delta mechanism is not only available here, it is also available in the BW system. So the whole process purely deals with the ETL logic and ETL flow. So what are these two boxes which is coming in? Whenever there is an external data which is handled through a flat file or through any web services, or which handles real-time data, SAP also provides some kind of adapters or connectors which tries to pull online information, which means whenever there is a stock change, whenever there is a stock change, price happens every minute and every second. That type of information can also be brought into the data source as a real-time update on each second or each minute, and then that data can be loaded into subsequent data layers at the top. So this is some of the external feature which is also available for a real-time updated data. So keeping this whole picture in mind, the exact data flow, how it happens in the SAP BW system can be easily historically seen here. Do you guys have any questions here up to here? Okay. Okay, a couple of slides I would like to really go a little more faster because like these are self-explanatory in fact, and I would also like to share this presentation to you guys so you can go offline and read these points here. Let me explain like what's exactly happening in the administrative cockpit here. Okay, we were talking about lot of IT practices. We were talking about some data acquisition. We are talking about some data modeling. We were talking about some ETL process, and we were talking about finally the data flow of the whole BW system. So it all deals with a lot of different areas like performance, data management, data acquisition. We talk about like table management, data loading statuses, how the error handling of data. Somewhere in the BW system, there should be a monitoring place to handle all these things. So SAP BW has provided an opportunity called Administrative Cockpit, where you can try to leverage this particular feature in order to monitor every minute and every second of the health check of the system, what exactly goes in and what exactly goes out on each of the BW objects. It can be a report, it can be a report, it can be a data target, or it can be any of the loading statistics, or it can be loading status, or table maintenance, or table memory maintenance. Those things are all can be pictorically viewed with the help of Administrator Cockpit. You can also set some thresholds based on send an email out saying like when the table is like 60% of the memory, you got to send an email so that you got to increase the memory size of the table, or in your process chain fail. So process chain is nothing but automation of data loading. You set a workflow where you do an automation of data loading. Suppose if that process chain fails, you send an email. So those type of alerts can also be set in the Administrative Cockpit. Performance. SAP BW has a highly challenging task on the performance activities because you're dealing with multiple layers of data warehousing, and you also deal with multiple millions of data in fact in the BW system, and most of them are running on the analytical engine. When you talk about analytical engine, once the data is in the data target, it can be in an InfoCube, or it can be in a DSO, or it can be even an info object. Once the data is in the BW system, in the data target, now there is a compiler engine or analytical engine, which is an OLAP engine. They call it an online analytical processing engine, OLAP engine. So typically the data management is taken care by OLAP. When a report is written out on the BW system, which is basically written on the OLAP layer, and that's where the data integration comes with report deliverables. So when you say about millions of data available in different warehousing layers, we talk about a lot of performance activities coming into picture. SAP has provided a tool called Business Warehouse Accelerator, where you store and try to manage the indexes of each data in different tables externally in a external warehouse CPU memory, where that's called the BWA, which is an entirely different box. So whenever the data is loaded in InfoCube, you basically create the indexes and load the data into the BWA. Now the BWA, which is nothing but the BW accelerator, takes care of the loading of data in the whole picture, and whenever the report runs out of BWA, which is really much more faster than the report is running out of the analytical engine or InfoCube. Why they brought this into picture is because there are a lot of performance related problems which is going on during this highly emerging of millions of data which is coming in different layers. And eventually we are talking about like, milliseconds and microseconds. But when you say about like challenging tasks, let's say like you're running a report, an aggregated report which involves billions of data, there is a little bit of amount of delay, which you're talking about like 6 or 7 seconds to run a report, whereas it will run 10 seconds without a BWA. Those type of activities are taken care. So SAP BW has a lot of features and a lot of options in order to tune the data availability, the data indexing in the tables in order to have a high performance analytical approach in the reports. So there are different transactions available. There are different, techniques where, you have to create aggregates. You can do table partitions. You can create indexes. You can, create statistical data. Those type of different techniques are available in order to tune your performance activity of the data which is stored in the data targets. Since you do all these performance optimization tuning in the back end, in the front end, in the back end, what are the performance tuning? Your data load happens very quickly. Your data load doesn't take a long time. So there are different techniques where you can tune your extraction data. Your transformation, you write your most optimized routines in order to make your transformations a little faster so that your DTP runs very quickly in order to load the data from data source to data target. So there are a little bit of performance activities there. On the reporting side, there are tremendous amount of features that are available in order to do a performance optimization there. So keeping all this in mind, there are a lot of high performance analytics which is going back and forth, both on the front end and the back end. So we will deal a lot of things when we come to that picture at that point. Information lifecycle management, which clearly deals with how the data has been archived externally in the bots and the servers, and how BI customers are reducing the amount of online data. They are basically, trying to archive or back up the data, or trying to do a nearline storage solution. Nearline storage solution is nothing but, you take only real-time data coming in. You don't store history data. Those type of different things can be handled, using different techniques actually. So dealing with the proper optimized performed data in the business format, which takes place all the way from the source extraction till the report deliverables, combining everything together in the enterprise data warehousing is called the information lifecycle management. So BI, when you talk about BI or BW data, which all the way takes up from the source system till the data target, you have to have some sort of lifecycle management. Otherwise, your data quality, your data maintenance, and your data archiving is going to be a very tough task. So these are different technologies or terminologies available in the BW world actually. Okay, some of the features are available on the later part of the, they're basically telling you like there are some additional features available in the data warehousing workbench. What is exactly data warehousing workbench? There is a transaction called RSA1, which is a very interesting transaction where you really do the entire BI architecture there, which in fact you really deal with the ETL process there. So that's where you talk about the data warehousing workbench. Apart from that, you deal with running your process chains. You deal with performance activities like repartitioning. You do with the data quality management, and you also handle your authorization concept. You deal with security process. You deal with the real, the capabilities of business content, what all it can provide and what all can be enhanced, what all customer can develop by their own from the scratch. Those type of different activities can be handled in the administrator workbench, which is called the data warehousing workbench. Okay, here's one of the interesting things, authorization concept. Okay, you got to keep in mind that authorization is available on the back end and the front end. On the back end, authorization is available right from the extraction. Simply logging into the BW system, you cannot extract HR data which has an employee-related information like SSN or pay scale or all data. So there should be some type of authorization which has to be given at the extractor level in order to extract the data. And at the same time, when loading the data from the data source to the data target, you have to have certain authorization to load the data to different staging layers. So why I stress this point is, your authorization is available at different layers. It's available at the extractor layer, it's available at the ETL layer, it is available at the reporting layer. Anybody cannot log into a report, to BW report, and check other people's personal information on a HR data. In that case, you provide certain authorization on the reporting level where your data is restricted. So those type of reporting concepts can also be covered in the whole type of presentation what we are looking at it. So which means different layers of authorizations are available in the BW system. Okay. Here's the end of the brief overview for the enterprise data warehousing. Next comes the enterprise reporting query and analysis, which is nothing but the front end. So I think next class we can quickly cover the overview of the front end. I'll really rush a little bit because it's going to be really easy, and basically I'll be talking about what are the reporting features we have, what are the different reporting techniques we have, and how a report can be used in the UI space, which is the process integration on the first slide which we've seen in the NetWeaver stack. Like whether it's going to be in a portal, whether it's going to be in Excel format, whether it's going to be in a SharePoint, or whether it's going to be a web-related one, those type of different things we can see. And how this report is being really written out of the backend, which is from the BW system, from the backend, from an input cube or from a DSO or from a multi-provider or a combination of both, based on the data modeling or based on the reporting business requirement, you would know what type of data you're going to really pull it out in the reporting way. So we'll talk a little more detail on the enterprise reporting query analysis, which is nothing but the front end of the SAP BW system. And business planning and analytics services, I won't talk much because we call it as a BPS, which is called business planning and simulation, and that's a subject on its own. But from the presentation standpoint, it is an add-on to this tool. So I will try to cover a detail on it, but if someone has a real deep interest on it, they can approach me anytime. So next class, I think it's tomorrow. We'll first 1 hour I will try to cover this particular chapter, and then we'll jump into the next as per the schedule where Shalini has provided you guys. So any questions? This class is just our overview, which is browsing through the terminologies and browsing through what type of technique, what is the data flow, what is the data model, and how really SAP BW is not only in ETL, it's also a part of the IT practices, and how are we going to really target the extraction process, those type of brief overview of terminologies we have discussed today. So do you guys have any questions right now to me?
Oh, Vijay, are you working right now on a BO or a BI?
I'm working on business objects and also BW, both of them. I'm working as data model architect for SAP BW, which has a leverage of business object reports and web intelligence on Excel sheets. So,
yeah. How many sessions are you going to take on a BA and BO? Do you have any? Are you going to let us know soon or?
Yeah, I was supposed to talk to Shalini after this meeting, or sometime tomorrow morning. I will try to let her know, and because there is a schedule we have already charted out, and I have to basically find out what would be the time availability, based on the people, in fact, and we'll try to confirm before tomorrow, the class actually.
Okay. One thing, Vijay, this is Sudhir. You said that if we as consultants, if you want to go into an area to begin with, it has to be either SAP BW or it has to be SAP BI, which is BO.
Yes.
So we need to decide exactly whether you want to go into the front end side or on the back end side. I decided I want to be in the SAP BO side. And
okay.
Likewise, there are a couple other people who purely want to be in the SAP BO side. So your training is tuned to both, or you want to cover the BW piece first and then the BO piece?
Here's a couple of suggestions I have given to Shalini.
Okay.
I can cover SAP BW and SAP Business Objects sequentially, or I can also cover SAP BW and parallelly I can take another session with SAP Business Objects entirely, which would be a separate session. It depends upon like the candidates how they are really willing to, and I mean why I'm stressing SAP BW initially is at least you need to have the first 3 overview sessions so that
Right.
you know exactly what you're talking on the SAP Business Objects, because now it's an SAP company, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you said last time. Like,
Yeah.
an SAP BO person, even if you want to go on the other side,
Yes.
you need to know certain aspects of,
Exactly.
SAP,
because when you say reporting, let's say like web intelligence in the business object, right? What is the source of web intelligence? It's going to be a BEX report or an info cube, right? So, without knowing that, I mean, I'm trying to at least brief you out on the functionality side so you guys know like what exactly and what it is. So.
And now that we are listening to what you're saying, Vijay, we don't have any recorded thing, and second place, are there any basic books for somebody like me, who's like new to all these things? I'm not a technical guy. Books or any kind of documentation would you be providing or arranging to provide?
Yes, there are course materials which is available. I need to find out where I can really, dump those documents into the folders, because those are really huge folders. I'm talking about 500 or 600 pages actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a huge PDF files and a couple of very interesting PowerPoint presentations where, those documents will be something like hitting the nail on the head. So once you read the document, you will get a clear idea on the overview of the document in effect. So I'm trying to, I'll basically check with Shalini, try to find out where exactly I have a SharePoint or something, and then we'll try to forward that link to you guys. And that's number 1. And number 2 is like, as of now, my schedule is to take SAP BW and then sequentially SAP BO. But if there are candidates really interested to have something like a parallel session or something, I'm very interested. I will totally dedicate that part also. But I have to find out from Shalini. I don't know what schedule she has for me. I have to find out from her. So yeah, and that's number 2. And regarding business objects, I don't know how many of you are like very interested in business objects. Just a team notification.
As of now, I think, if I'm not wrong, 4.
Okay.
Myself also, Nirmal also interested actually, business objects.
Okay.
I would say everybody.
Okay. In business objects, I can cover 3 areas. One is the web intelligence, okay, which is they call it as a Webby. And the other one is Excelsius. I know you guys have heard about Excelsius, which is a very interesting topic actually. Excelsius, which is a dashboarding tool. And third one, I can also take crystal reports. That's no problem for me because crystal reports was there in BW for quite a long time. So I can cover it in the BW itself actually. And the third one is, which I'm talking about, the CMC, the Central Management Console. That's the heart of business objects, which is nothing but the administration and system maintenance of the business objects. And if we really want to cover the CMC, then I don't know who all are interested in CMC. Like, if you are trying to become a basis guy, or if you're trying to become an administrator or network guy, those type of people with expertise need to know what is CMC actually. So CMC would be something like a different class, in fact, and I can handle that one also. So so altogether, like, if someone is interested, then we got to think about something like a weekend class which covers with CMC, something like that. I mean, yeah. But on a whole, like, we can cover crystal reports, we can cover web intelligence, we can cover Excelsius, and apart from that, I have a couple of good experiences on analytics, web intelligence analytics, and also we can also cover Voyager. Now they are converting to analytics, but we can also cover Voyager. So those are the different areas also we can cover. So why I'm throwing all these things is, like, see, both are 2 different oceans actually. So if you are covering on enterprise data warehousing and SAP BW reporting, and BobJ, those are two different areas. Why I said like when I'm covering enterprise reporting, I can also cover BobJ because that's the ultimate end of SAP BW. So there will be a relatively continuity from end to end. But if people are really, they say like, I really want to know only business objects, yeah, fair enough. We can try to arrange something and, have a parallel session going on. So, I mean, you guys let Charlie know like what's your preference, and then she can let me know, and from there we can take. Okay.
Yeah, and what is universe, Vijay? Universe will come. Universe is there, I think. Something
Yes.
like that.
Oh, okay. I totally missed that one. Universe designer is one of the very important. I will be 100% covering that one also.
Yeah, it's in actually Vivo, is that right?
It's in business objects. It's a schematical layer. It's a schematical layer in the business objects and in the business object enterprise level. And eventually, like, I will also be covering universe designer. Sorry to miss that. Thanks for reminding. And that would be the first place I would be starting with business objects, which is the universe designer. Yeah, yeah.
What is this live office, Vijay?
Okay. Excelsius, there is a product called Excelsius in the dashboarding, right?
Yeah.
Excelsius has like, it's nothing but an Excel related interface which helps you to create different dashboards. And Excelsius, there is an Excel interface where it needs to feed data into it, right? Without data feed, you cannot run an Excelsius because there should be somewhere data coming in. So there are different connectivities to this Excelsius. One type of connectivity is called Business Intelligence Consumer Service. They call it as BICS, where that Excel of the Excelsius directly connects the BEX report in the BW to BICS. Okay, and the number two is the Excel of the Excelsius directly connects to the universe designer, which is nothing but it connects to the universe and then tries to pull the data, and that's called the QoS, query as a web service. The Excelsius, the Excel of the Excelsius directly connects the web intelligence report in order to get the data, and that's through the live office actually. So there are 4 to 3 different ways where Excel of the Excelsius can try to get the data and run the dashboard at the top, because like your Excel of the Excelsius is a dummy tool without a data connectivity. So one sort of connectivity is through live office, where live office is nothing but it connects the Webby report in the BobJ layer and then pulls the data to the Excelsius and then displays the dashboard. So typically, that's a part of the connectivity live office. And it is a very interesting topic. See, let me give you a very, since I have, I won't take more than 5 minutes, it's already 11. The current project which I'm working on in Estée Lauder, it's an Excelsius dashboarding project. So I'm working on an European general manager's dashboard for sales and marketing. It deals with Excelsius, and the Excelsius gets data through a live office from the web intelligence report. Okay, Webby report. We call it as a Webby report. And the Webby report gets data from the universe designer, which is nothing but the universe of the BobJ. And the universe gets data from the SAP BW BEX report in the BW system. And the BEX report gets the data from the SAP BW multi-provider. And the multi-provider has a lot of info cubes and DSOs. And those info cube and DSO gets data all the way from the SAP source extractors, which is the sales and distribution extractors. So this is the project which I'm working on, and I'm the architect for this whole design. So that's what I'm saying. You guys can really, try to make use of me very wisely, and I can provide all live examples, so it's very easily understandable. And regarding live office, I've worked on live office, and eventually, I think it's 67 or 68 bugs are there on the live office actually with SAP. We worked very closely with the SAP product development, and we tried to solve a lot of issues on the live office. And we have also worked on SAP QoS, which is the query as a web service, and I've also worked on the BICS. So absolutely no problem. And whatever you get, the interest of you guys, please let Shalini know, and we can plan and schedule classes accordingly, based on your requirement.
Yeah,
Or if you guys want like let's say like 6 classes on Excel sheets, yeah, absolutely no problem. End to end I can cover for you guys. If you want like 6 classes for Webby, yeah, I mean, based on your preferences. But I was given a schedule to, basically concentrate on the schedule so that we don't divert somewhere. But if you guys really want to get into the topic, what you really want, we can definitely organize accordingly. Okay?
If you can come up with the number of sessions for BA and BO, then number of days, then I think will be more clarity, and we can decide on like. Basically, I'm interested.
No problem. Because yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically I'm interested from endpoint to like from back end to front end, but some people, if they are interested only in business objects, maybe if you can give a of sessions, maybe they can differentiate, or they can decide based on that.
Yes, even with the business objects alone, I have to really cover this enterprise reporting and query analysis for you guys, so that before getting into business objects, you guys have a brief overview of the back end and brief overview of the front end, and then we can start covering detail on the business objects. But on the other side, on the BW sessions, still we will be covering these two, and then we'll be jumping the first one and the second one.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still haven't confirmed like the number of hours with Shalini. Probably by the end of tomorrow or something like that, I'll try to confirm with her, and so that she can update you guys formally. So yeah.
Yeah, Vijay.
Yes, Shalini. Yeah.
I'm Shweta here.
Hey, Shweta, how are you?
I'm fine. Actually, Vijay, I'm just new to this thing, so I'm just aware of the SQL, basic SQL and all those stuff, but I don't know anything about the SAP thing. So is it the best way to start off from here, or do I need to learn something else?
Your voice is breaking, Shweta. Sorry. Please, can you repeat one more time?
Yeah, like I'm aware of the basic SQL and few other scripting languages, but I'm not aware of the SAP. Like I'm totally new to this, so is it the best way to start off from here, or do I need to know anything else other than this? Like before.
Okay. Since you have the basic SQL background, a very brief introduction on the enterprise data warehousing and enterprise reporting, and immediately you can jump into the business objects area actually. And if you want to stick on to business objects, but if you want to get into the SAP BW or the SAP world, then there is one more introduction on the SAP. How SAP systems behave and how SAP systems can be navigated. So that has to be really covered before getting you into the picture. But I would suggest, like, here's what my suggestion. And since you have very strong experience on the SQL side, SAP Business Objects still runs only on the SQL engine as of now. Okay, it is still not fully integrated with the SAP systems, so it still runs on the SAP SQL side, and you have a very good opportunity where you try to leverage all the business object reporting tools like the Web Intelligence, Digital Reports, Universe Designer, Excel sheets, those things. There will be a lot of opportunities outside today. Believe me or not, it's really very demand, especially with the Universe Designer, Web Reports, and Excel sheets. That type of knowledge, there are only limited people outside the market actually. So, and I would really suggest you to focus more on that side. But if you're really interested to get into the SAP BW and then get into the SAP world, absolutely no issues. And it will be a little challenging, at least for a couple of sessions, because the terminologies and the screen navigations will be a little different actually. But apart from that, from the knowledge-wise, you can just really get the business objects idea, and then and try to play around the game. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I was confused about the terminology, so I thought maybe I need to learn something before starting this.
Yeah. I mean, it's little. I mean, see, people like who are not in the SAP area, at least for a couple of times, like unless you hear these terminologies, you won't be really familiar. So once if you start seeing those terminologies, understanding the real definition of terminologies, then you try to differentiate. See, for instance, I was talking about extractor and data source, right? So
Yeah.
now whoever really know what it is, extracted is on the source system, data is on the BW side. Both seems to be like that's the difference. So something like that you will be a little finding difficult. But on course of conversation, you will try to learn a lot of things. And see, the other option is, here is the option. People like you, a couple of places I have suggested a lot of people. People who is coming from a different like Oracle background or something like a SQL background, I tremendously tell them have a very clean idea on the reporting side and a basic overview on the data modeling and basic overview on how to navigate and see the backend data. That's it. You don't want to know much detail on it, but you concentrate more on the reporting side and you concentrate more on the business object side. So that's the place like you have to leverage your skills and try to work on your projects and build your profile. So this is the type of advice I give. But people who is coming from the real BW SAP background, they already know the SAP system. Okay, it's very easy for them to try to know and understand the terminologies in the SAP BW because after all it's another product. They know the SAP tool, and also this, in addition, they are now going to know another product, which is again an SAP tool. So in that case, it will be very easy. When they come into the enterprise reporting, query analysis, and BobJ, then you guys all will be in the same boat actually, which is like, we'll be looking more detail on the reporting side. So.
Okay.
I don't know whether you guys have that schedule for all the classes. You guys have that curriculum or something?
Beginning time actually she already sent actually, but
something like a PPT or something like that. Is that right?
yeah.
Not really. It was basically she sent
PDF
Word document, I think.
Yeah, document. I mean, MS Word document. Yes.
Okay. 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 I think you guys haven't received that. Anyway, I'll try to double check with her tomorrow first thing in the morning, and I will ask her to send you guys that curriculum. You guys go with that curriculum. If there is any changes you guys prefer, like let me know. I can alter accordingly. Otherwise, from the SAP best practice business standpoint and from the SAP training side, this is the curriculum they also follow. The documents which I'm talking about, like 600, 400 pages, those all, which covers the portions whatever we have in the curriculum. So we're just trying to stick onto that, curriculum so that we don't get diverted. But if you feel like, like a couple of people like want to stay only on the reporting, then, I can alter accordingly and try to provide another curriculum. So absolutely no issues. Whatever your preference, just let her know, and by end of tomorrow, like I'm going to tell her that these are the number of hours which we are going to cover based on the curriculum which we have. So if there is any change, then we'll try to change accordingly and let you guys know in the future classes. So.
Question, Vijay, like can we also get the access to BO system?
Yes, yes. I've also requested Shalini and Nandu regarding the access. So they will also getting back to me about the system information. So once if I receive it, I'll pass on to you guys actually.
In fact, actually, we got the information regarding the access, Vijay, but today I tried to access, but it's actually giving error. So that's what I already informed to Shalini.
Okay.
She said she will actually.
I'm really not aware of that, but I will try to find out from her definitely. Because okay. I myself was asking about the access because my old one was already expired, so I'm trying to request her. But yeah, I'll make a note of it and try to ask her so that by the end of third session we'll be getting into the system, try to navigate things and so on.
Okay, thank you.
And any other questions? I mean, I guess all of you guys have at least SAP knowledge on it, or am I wrong?
Well, this is to be well, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Then I think a couple of other guys. Madhu is one. Madhu has it. Madhu is in SAP product systems.
Okay. Yes.
And Srinivas, I think, he's a.
Yes, this is Srini Vijay, and I'm working on SAP ABAP side. I know a little bit of BI, but not much. So.
Okay. Okay. So you know all these extractor function models and all those things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, again, for people coming from SAP background, this is not going to be really a rocket science, except there is a little bit of difference in the terminologies. They can really pick it up. But people who are new to SAP, it's still very easy. They can still pick it up, actually. There is no issues.
Okay.
Come again? Someone is asking something.
Oh, I think we're good. All right. So are we meeting? Yeah. Are we meeting tomorrow again at the same time?
Yes, tomorrow same time. We'll be. I think she'll be sending a invite again. And as of now, I'll be covering the first hour. I'll be covering the enterprise reporting query analysis, and the second hour I'll be getting into detail as per the curriculum. So, so we can stick onto the curriculum so that we can go in a flow, because the curriculum has a very good start and end based on from the back end all the way to the reporting, including BobJ actually. I don't know whether you guys seen, but still I'll ask her to re-forward that curriculum again. So that includes both the SAP BobJ also. But if majority of the people are really breaking for BobJ, then we'll plan accordingly, and we can create another session where we can discuss only reporting and BobJ alone, so that we stay on the same ball. So,
No problem.
Yeah.
One suggestion, Vijay.
Yes.
While in the class, right, if you could use some running notes. I understand today's was just a kind of an acclamation of the terminology for us, but I understand that. But otherwise, if you can use some running notes for writing it down, so we can kind of have a look at it while listening.
As of now,
running notes in the sense, like you would use a Word doc to type something and show, just to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really trying to find out whether I can take something like an online class or something, but we don't have that software available right now on my laptop. On the other side, hold on, let me think actually. There is a classroom session. I need to find out from Nandu actually what exactly the availability at that time, because we are taking it late in the night, right? 9 to 10, 11, right? So the office is closed at 5 o'clock or something. So, but that's a good point. I will try to find out from him, definitely. Otherwise, at least on the Word document, we'll try to, have something like a sharing basis where, people can scribble something, try to share and show something like that. Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
We actually are not recording anything here, so we got to really retain what all you said, kind of thing. I'm at least for me. So probably these notes
okay. One thing. At least someone should have raised this point before me starting it. At least I would have tried, because I have that Snagit recorder here. Actually, I would have recorded actually.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, sorry guys. But anyway, from next session, I'll make sure like I started recording, and then the very first thing, important thing, I need to find out a SharePoint location where I can dump the files. And number two, I need to find out the schedule and pass it on to you guys, the curriculum. And number three, find out the interest of business objects and the BW related, those three. And also the recording option, I'll find out from her whether she can do it. Otherwise, I can do it from my laptop because I have the software in me. So that's also possible. And but during the session, if you guys feel any doubts or anything, even if it's a basic, I really don't mind. Please stop by any time. And even if it is like 10th time explaining, I really don't mind. I really want the concept to be, very well understood by you people, because tomorrow when you go to the customer side, they really don't see whether you work in the transaction or whether you really, create an info cube or something. You need to really talk process, and you really need to try to be at the top of the edge, talking about data architecture and modeling actually. So that's where the client and customers really expect, because when you go in for a BW architect or data model ETL guy, or other than a developer, you'll be really working more towards on the data process and ETL flow. So that type of things, like you have to really understand the process. Only then you can differentiate what type of data is coming in, what type of data is utilized in the ETL layer, what type of data is utilized in the reporting side, what type of data is thrown to the business object side. Those type of differentiation has to be very well known actually. I mean, I will try to explain as much as knowledge which I have, because I'm really sharing a lot of things. But at the same time, if you guys see something very interesting information, I would really love to, share that information also. So please do come up with also good ideas. And I will also try to find out some of the online websites where you can read some of the documents regarding SAP Material BI and SAP Business Objects. It's an SAP website, and I will also try to send you guys that link so that you can start browsing through that one. Because being an SAP guy, I think Srini and other people they very well known about Service Marketplace and SDN Forum and all those things. So those are the interesting things where you can find tons of information regarding SAP. Not only SAP BW, all the SAP products. So since we are focused more on the SAP BW, you can really classify and get to the SAP BW area and start reading materials where you become more and more on the BW guide, such type of person, which includes even business objects actually. So absolutely no issues. And for Sweta, like a lot of people who is working on the SQL side, currently in my project there is one reporting developer who is a SQL background guy who works for me, and he really doesn't know anything about SAP BW or SAP system. All in all, he knows only the SAP business objects. So right from data coming from the universe designer, he knows how to handle the data up to the end user in an Excel sheet dashboard. So that type of knowledge he has. He's basically coming from a SQL background. So he can troubleshoot and he can find out any type of data errors in the reporting side, in the business object side, where at some places I really requested my backend developers to change the data model based on his findings actually. So that type of knowledge he has actually. So you have a lot of scope on that area. So really, you really don't want to worry about it. So just want to comment on that too. So.
And one question, Vijay, SAP BO actually will work with only with the SAP or any ERP system?
SAP Business Objects, okay, initially it was just Business Objects. Business Objects is the product on its own, which was trying to be used on all the SAP ERPs, all the ERP systems, not SAP ERP, all the ERP systems. You can even connect a web services coming from any market researcher data, right? So it need not be only SAP system. It can be any system. It can even connect to any operating system, any RDBMS, any DBMS, anything like that. Because those business object products have their own connectors to communicate with other systems. Since SAP bought business objects, it came into as SAP business objects, and from then onwards, it's a reporting tool on its own, right? So SAP started leveraging more of the functionality for SAP products actually. So that's why you'll be seeing like, most of the SAP clients, if they have business objects, they are talking more with the SAP products. But out in the market, you won't believe like there are 30,000 customers business objects who purely run non-SAP systems. So yes.
That's good.
And eventually you won't believe SAP product, SAP BW is an SAP product. At the same time, Business Objects has a data warehousing tool. Have you heard about it? Business Objects has a data warehousing tool called Data Model, Data Modi. They call it as Data Federator. So integrator, right?
Data integrator.
Data Modi. They call it as a Modi. Yeah, Data Integrator. And that's more like graphical user interface, which takes the technology of Informatica and some concepts from the Teradata. And for people like Sweta, who is coming from SQL background, that's one of the real top edge leveraging tool where you guys can get into it and jump and work on it. Because the Data Federator, Data Integrator, those things are coming up as a latest technology into the SAP ERP systems actually. So once if they completely get integrated with SAP, you guys will be far advanced actually with those tools. So those are the very cool areas where you can really be very challenging in the market, and your profile can really be in the high level notches. So that's one of the interesting tools. So I mean, I don't know much about Data Integrated, but Data Federator I'm very much aware of it because that purely deals with universe designers actually. So I mean, it is a very interesting topic. Again, we can also discuss about data federated when we are covering business objects. So that's also one of the very interesting tools. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Oh, I didn't hear anything about Nirmal. Sorry. Is Nirmal there or?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I am actually basically J. Edwards guy, technical guy,
Uh-huh.
and I worked on SAP ABAP also.
Okay. So you did some of the migration projects in SAP
Yeah.
from J. Edwards.
And I
Okay.
worked on
So what what are the modules you worked on?
Outplay also.
Okay.
So right now I thought of myself.
Okay. I mean, see, the very interesting thing with the SAP after merging with this, a lot of people, SAP BW consultants out in the market, they started slowly migrating to business objects. I don't know why they do it, but it's because of the fashion of new technology and tool coming into SAP, but they started slowly moving towards business objects.
Okay.
See, but the very clear intention is they already knew like what is SAP BW is. Now they want to really learn something different and keep it on the top of the market.
Okay.
But for people who are really coming from business objects background or some SQL background or any non-SAP background, those people like, I mean, they can still directly bypass it to the SAP business object technology, but SAP is thinking by itself, which is a default thinking, like they are already aware of the W system. So that's the real flaw. That's a hidden fact, actually, I would say. So,
Okay.
I mean, typically, whoever is coming into the business objects world, they don't want to be a king in the BW side or in the SAP side. They can always be a king on the business objects.
Okay.
But what is SAP recommending is, please always do an idea on the overview of the SAP products, because down the line, like a couple of years from now, it's going to be a complete integration with SAP. So in that time, like you guys shouldn't see something very different on the product. So that's why they are trying to stress and pull, saying always have an overview of the SAP product and then jump into the business objects. So,
Okay. Gotcha.
yeah, even the business object developers, even the business object consultants who were before the SAP merger, they are still there with the SAP systems. But now you never know. I have a couple of good friends who is working on the development side on the business object products. They say like they are learning SAP because they have to, because the interfaces are all written under SAP languages actually. So in that case, definitely the product is slowly coming into the SAP world. So,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, so I'm trying to give you information all over the places so that, whenever someone or anybody, like when you talk about BW, you have all these different sort of information where you can start communicating. When you start reading materials, when they try to bring a lot of collaboration messages, like what's exactly going in and out actually. So that type of, methodology. So I always tell these type of messages to most of my people because they are aware of what they are really working on, what they are really learning on actually. So,
Okay. Thank you.
any other questions? Yeah, I think it's already 11:30, I guess, so it's high time. Thank you very much, guys. We'll check same time, like 9 p.m. And I'll try to clarify a couple of questions, like whatever you guys asked with Shalini, and then she may get back to you, or or we may discuss sometime like what.